The folks from Philadelphia do that, but yeah, it's my experience of going through Jersey was '95 all for years, and when I lived down there, then I did go down to the boardwalk and down in not Cape May, but oh, I forget the name of the town.
Ocean City.
Yeah, it was Ocean City, because I always get Ocean City, Maryland, and Ocean City, New Jersey mixed up. But that old boardwalk thing, you know, it just reminded me of, I think one of the first gigs my dad's band had when they were 17. They booked the band, and they booked in somewhere in New Jersey.
Right.
They drove all the way there to Wildwood or something, and they forgot their guitars, and my grandmother had to meet them in Harrisburg, and they were 17, and they were in a rock and roll band, man.
Right.
And they got there, and nobody showed up. Yeah, well, I mean, like
they got there and there's no guitars.
Yeah, that type of deal. But so I'll tell you what that song made me think of, and I think it's Dylan Thomas. It made me think. I was kind of getting that. Because when I went to New York, I had to go to the White Horse Tavern.
Yeah.
I mean, you made that pilgrimage. There's something. I wish I could explain to me what it is about Irish literary, creative music, any of that. It's just it seems kind of fatalistic in a sense, and you know, I don't put a finger on it.
I'm told I write. I do write depressing songs. I think they come.
No. I didn't mean that as a.
Well, there is a party. I mean, when you sit down to write, you don't really have control over it. If you try and control it, it doesn't come out right. And that's what I've always found. But I've sat down and actually tried to write about something, or I've sat down to try and write a song in a particular genre, or you know, it doesn't come out. It always sounds forced. It really has to. You know, you really have to just sort of sit back and take a deep breath and try and touch on something. And sometimes I guess depending on your personality, you'll touch on. I think Irish people have a tendency to be able to touch more easily into a tragedy than joy. Or we love. You know, it's I can't. I mean, my favorite writer probably is James Joyce.
Ulysses.
Not even Dubliners is his short story collection, which I love. The Dead is probably one of the most beautiful pieces of writing that I've ever read. It is, and, you know, I could read it over and over again. But it is. He touches on that sort of quiet desperation so well, and I think that's.
You know, when I think some of the contemporaries that like Glenn Hance or Damien Rice. The writers that, you know, songwriters that I know, that, you know, and there's something about tapping into that. I don't want to call it maybe fatalistic. It's not but it's this, and not that it only is from Ireland, but there's just something about it that, you know, when I hear it, there's a like, for instance, we were talking a little bit about U2, and if you remember the movie Rattle and Hum, and the Edge sings Van Diemen's Land. By far, like my favorite song on that entire record, and he is singing about. I think that is an Irish folk tune, right?
I don't even know. I think it's an English folk tune.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So somebody's sent away. To prison, and he's leaving his wife, and you know, and I think of some of Bob Dylan's tunes that he covered. Early on, we're in that same kind of.
He covered a song called Jim Jones in one of his later. He did a couple of folk albums in the early '90s, and I could sit here for an entire hour and play you nothing but songs about people from Ireland or England being sent to Australia. There's a whole slew of them. It was part of it was what was going on at the time. You know, people were being sent there for some for very bad crimes, and some for robbing a loaf of bread, you know. So, but yeah, Van Diemen's Land is extraordinary, and the Edge's voice is extraordinary too. I mean, it's just piercing, and you know, it's
the first time I ever actually heard him sing other than Bono. So, you know, you were telling. Okay, so you grew up in Dublin.
Yeah.
In northern Dublin, you were saying.
In the city, just sort of on the north side of the city, which is Dublin is a little bit split. The north side was usually considered like the more working class side. The south side was nicer, you know. I guess.
You were talking about American music when you were growing up. You would hear, and your first.
Well, yeah. Well, when I talk about my influences, it was when I was very young. The first album that I remember really making me stand up and want to learn guitar was the first Traveling Wilburys album. And I heard that album, and I remember like thinking that was it. This is my music. This is the music that I want to listen to from now on in. Everything else I can throw away, and I had some other stuff, but and that became a huge influence. So I started listening to Tom Petty and Bob Dylan, especially, and then getting into Bob Dylan's influences, getting into Ramblin' Jack Elliott and Woody Guthrie and those guys. So I was a weird teenager, where all the other people in my class were sort of listening to Nirvana, who I loved as well, Nirvana and U2 and stuff, and I was listening to Ramblin' Jack Elliott and trying to make other people listen to him as well. But that was the songwriting. That was a big influence, because it's you heard these songs that were just put together so simply but so beautifully, and there were guys who didn't necessarily have the greatest voices. They emoted songs, more than sang them, and that really impressed me because I didn't consider myself a singer, so I couldn't sing like Bono. I don't do U2 covers because I'm never going to sound like him, But the other funny thing was that growing up in my house, we didn't have a record player until I was probably like 13, maybe, So, but there was always music in the house but it was singing, Like every time people came over to the house, aunts and uncles, and they were all singers. They were all singers and they were all musicians. And when they would get together in my house, everyone had their songs that they would do. Everyone would. It would go around the room, and my grandparents and my aunts and uncles, and they would join in with each other, but one person took the lead on any particular song. And it could be from anywhere. My granny would sing Patsy Cline songs. My mom would sing, my dad would sing Buddy Holly songs, or he'd love to sing the Boxer, as well as all these great Irish and English folk songs. And he was very instrumental in getting me to listen to English folk songs, which kind of sounds weird if you're growing up in Ireland and singing folk songs. You think of the rebel songs, and my dad would say no. You listen to the English folk songs too, and they're a lot of them are telling the same story because the regular people always went through the same kind of thing, like normal. The regular folk always have it the same. It doesn't matter where you go, So when we eventually got a record player, I went nuts. Like, it was great. But I would say that the bigger influence in me actually singing were those kind of get-togethers, because you had to get up and do your piece, So much as you didn't want to, and then you gradually came to enjoy, because everyone clapped at the end, no matter how bad or good or whatever you were, But you learn a lot of songs. We learned a lot of songs that way.
Well, that we were talking a little bit about how the history of Ireland, Scotland, the UK in general, and how that music was really tied into Appalachian music, bluegrass, and there's a popular movie or Songcatcher, which was about that thing where they found this group of people who were in the Appalachians. I think it was North Carolina or Kentucky or something, and they had these songs that they had brought over from, and they had kept them. And I think "Oh Death" was one of them. It was based on the same melody, same melodies that they brought over from the old country when they came over, and you can hear that in the bluegrass music of Appalachia, and the beginnings of the Carter family and all the country music.
That was a huge tie, I mean, that's why American country music, as we were saying earlier, is very popular in Ireland, You're very likely to find a guy in a bar singing American country songs. In fact, you're more likely to find them singing Garth Brooks than singing like Irish stuff. But
wow.
But sometimes, that makes me frown a little.
I'll have a Guinness and.
Can you stop him? It's like,